Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece chapter 1054 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. Now that you have, let's begin. So yeah, I'm just kind of shocked at how much this chapter threw out at us. Like, not just small things, right? Just huge things. Things that we've been looking forward to for a long time, all at the same time. I mean, that's what we should expect, I guess, from whatever you call it, post-arc One Piece. That's pretty much peak One Piece, but still being here with this right now, good lord. Do you feel like we're in the end game yet? I know that everyone already sort of felt that or knew that was coming, but this chapter, again, it's coming. You might as well start the countdown. It hit me like a truck the moment that I knew that Shanks was in Wano. Of course, that was subverted drastically, wildly, insanely, and that's part of the discussion we'll have today, but still, Shanks appearing in Wano, I mean, that's like one of the first promises that Oda ever made in the story. But I better stop or I'm gonna cry. Once again, I don't even know where to begin with this one, so I guess we'll just start at the beginning. We'll start with Green Bull. You know, in a chapter with all sorts of crazy twists and turns, big reveals, big things that I never would have expected in a million years, I think I understand the Green Bull thing the least, or at least I don't know what Oda's gonna do with it. But to start off with, when he was introduced, I felt like it was a little bit fast. I loved all the drawings, his powers are amazing, of course, but you can just tell that Oda is in a hurry for us to get to know Green Bull so that he can do something with him. And the reason that we know this is because I believe this is the first admiral who pretty much straight upon introduction immediately explains, info dumps what he stands for and who he is in a very direct way. Like the ideal, and I say it's the ideal, it doesn't always have to be followed, but the ideal is that you can pick up all this information without the character having to directly explain it to you. So it's based off of like what he does, show don't tell, basically. But the reason why it's just the ideal, and it doesn't always have to be the case, is not every character is equally important, and this chapter has me wondering about the importance of Green Bull, not gonna lie. Like, it kind of pains me to say this, right? But when you get challenged by Momonosuke, some red flags start crawling up. In no universe do I think, or should I think, that Momonosuke is going to defeat Green Bull, but, you know, we just came off, this is a problem, right? We just came off of the end of an arc where the Straw Hats did the impossible, right? They defeated Kaido. We spent the whole arc saying, like, Kaido's going to get them, but then they're going to come back, and then it never happened. So now we have a similar-ish situation with Momonosuke and Green Bull, where it's like, I'm afraid to say the obvious thing, right? Like, there's no way that Momonosuke is going to defeat an admiral, right? Like, regardless of whether you think admirals are below Yonko, it's Momonosuke. In no universe. Am I right? In no universe. There's no way. But then the other half of my brain is like, what if Oda does something crazy, right? Like, Momonosuke, ancient weapon Uranus, displays some unforeseen power, just an auto win condition or something stupid. And then I remind myself that I think too much. But anyway, let's backtrack. We're getting too far ahead of ourselves. There's too much to talk about, okay? Green Bull as a character. Rip all the theories that Green Bull is related to Wano. Because if that was true, you would imagine that that would have been revealed immediately upon meeting the other samurai, so into the trash can it goes. However, we still have some confirmations that Green Bull is very Akainu-like. Supposedly. You guys know how it is. There's like what we got in the chapter, and then there's JB's opinion of it. These two things are not usually equal. But yeah, what the chapter is trying to convince us of is that Green Bull is very Akainu-like, bit headstrong, very strong in his beliefs, and the desire to enforce them aggressively. I would actually say that he has even less subtlety than Akainu because, I mean, he just stumbles upon a random group of people, immediately recognizes them as some sort of enemy and starts yelling at them about philosophical stuff. And then pulls out all of his powers immediately, goes full transform mode, and I guess to intimidate them or just because he's ready to go. Call him eager justice. So we get to see him immediately in all of his Logia plant glory, which was awesome. As a side note, I just feel like a nature plant Logia is just a weird concept. I know that we've had characters like Caribou, who's a swamp. So a swamp, I mean, could be like a forest, I guess. So you could see how biomes could represent Logias potentially. But I don't know, something about this just makes me wonder, is his fruit improperly labeled kind of like Luffy's? But as like a side note, I'm questioning my reality here. Is Crocodile a desert man or is he a sand man? And is the difference important? You have various types of forests, right? So you got a rainforest man and then you got a deciduous man. I'm just saying. But one thing that this fruit does do, which I like conceptually, is that it offers the opportunity for there to be a CC devil fruit as opposed to a water devil fruit, which, you know, that just feels like what should be the ultimate devil fruit in the universe. Not a water fruit, but the sea fruit. But yeah, I think that actually, you know, what I like is I don't like info dumps about a character. I mean, I'll accept it. It doesn't really bother me in this chapter that Green Bull does this, but I wouldn't call it a good attribute of the chapter, and it made it feel very fast. Specifically, you know, he just meets the characters and then they start fighting. It just happens really, really fast. I definitely think that him spewing everything about his character and his thoughts immediately, you know, from page 2, contributes to this feeling. So the kinds of characterization that I tend to like are more subtle, right? You have to figure it out. And you have some of that in this chapter, at least things which you can speculate about. And I'm going to speculate about it and we're going to turn it around and make it all great. But you can see that Green Bull asks a ton of questions. In fact, his very first panel is a thoughtful question. The ability to sway others, that really is something. You don't see that very often. You see what I'm talking about here? He doesn't like state, I am a very thoughtful man. Instead, he has a thought in which you can draw the conclusion that perhaps Green Bull is a thoughtful person. And this lines up really well with what happens next. I mean, just like immediately. He jumps right in there. He starts philosophizing straight at the Samurai Momonosuke and Yamato, this is the kind of thing that somebody who has thoughts, is thoughtful, asks questions, and has opinions would do. Honestly, I feel a little attacked here. I mean, like this is the kind of thing that I would do, but I don't want Green Bull to be my spirit animal from One Piece, or maybe I do want that. It's also fitting with the nature fruit for some reason. Those two things align really well for me. The wonder of nature, I suppose, has always inspired great thought. So he just sort of goes off here, and then after this, it's again a lot of questions. Yamato appears and hits him. Yamato has surprising haki, and he's like, who are you? And he's like, I'm the son of Kaido. He's like, Kaido? And then Momonosuke tries to attack him again. He asks a question like, what the heck is going on here? He's analyzing. And then Momo has a nice moment here showing his character growth from the arc, showing resolve. And then this is where it really struck me. Green Bull asks another question. A pink dragon, how odd. This is the first I've heard of that ability. Those other questions I think made more sense in the context of what's going on. They feel more natural to ask, but it struck me as individual. So I don't know exactly how to phrase this in the most beautiful way, but I kind of get the impression, my theory is that Green Bull is kind of cultured. He is a man of science, maybe, or somebody who asks questions to seek understanding, and then teaches that understanding. So anyway, as you reread this with the hypothetical that Green Bull is a man of science, it makes you wonder just how much he's convinced of the things that he is saying. Like, does he really believe this in his core, or is it something that he kind of has to begrudgingly admit? An observation that he had, he came to a conclusion, even if he doesn't like it. This is the world that we live in. Again, assuming this is all true, I think that Oda is sort of setting up a conflict, an inner conflict, within Green Bull, which is related very much to the real world. It's science versus faith. I think that this is a really cool conversation to potentially have in One Piece, even if it's not direct, right? Even if it's indirect. A lot of people see science as a threat to faith. I feel like other people can probably word this better than I can, but I watched Tim Minchin a lot when I was younger. He's just like a comedian of sorts, but in one of his songs he says, science adjusts its views based on what's observed. Faith is the denial of observation so that belief can be preserved. So from this quote, right, you can understand, and I think that a lot of people already know generally, atheism and science are two things that a lot of people lump together. If you observe things, if you ask questions, eventually you'll discover something that doesn't add up. Or at the very least, the questions will become increasingly difficult to answer. But on the flip side, you have people like Einstein who have a quote of, "Science without religion is lame, religion without science is blind." Or another quote, "A little science distances you from God, but a lot of science brings you nearer to him." So there's a range of opinions. And I tend to think that probably Oda's gonna marry this somehow, where if Green Bull is a man of science, he believes in what he can actually observe and prove. Meanwhile, you see this with the strats all the time, and this is something that causes a lot of conflict between the story and the fan bases. A lot of it is faith-based, like Zoro and Sanji. There's no reason that you should believe that Luffy can take out both Big Mom and Kaido, but this is the fight that they're in, and they have to believe. There's no real logic in it. Every time that the strats state that Luffy is going to be the man to become the Pirate King, that's faith. Like, that's a part of the story. All of their dreams, in fact. There's no logic in it. If they went based on what they could observe, right, they wouldn't have chased such lofty ambitions. Which is pretty much the moral. And you see this applied again here with Yamato, the samurai Momonosuke. Green Bull spouts his truths based on things that he has observed, and they just totally reject it. And then at the end here, you can see Momonosuke is asking for his comrades to have faith in him, even though there should be no reason, right, that we should believe that he can defeat an admiral. You see how potentially just incredible this is? Applause level of depth. And I think that this is a contradiction that Oda has weaved into Green Bull's design itself. I mean, like the study of nature is possibly the first science, or the first thing which inspired thought. At the same time, a lot of people consider nature to be a thing of God. I'm not going to pull up any more quotes, but I'm sure that I could find things related about how the study of nature has taken us further from God, or away from faith. But then also find quotes where nature brings you closer. Speaking of questions, he kind of embodies the question. But, and this is important to where I think that the story might be going, if Green Bull is a man of science, then his opinion can change if evidence indicates otherwise. And as I said, I don't want to go in too many circles, but as I said earlier, I just kind of get the impression that what he's saying, even though he's saying it, this is not something that brings him joy. He's not glad that the world works this way. He's just explaining that and living by the rules as he sees them. One thing that we know about Green Bull is that there's a reason why Green Bull wasn't chosen as an admiral before now. He's kind of a rebel, or there was something about him which did not make him an ideal candidate. And in SBS, Oda talked about how Green Bull has an agenda of his own. Is not necessarily directly aligned with the world government. So I expect that to come up. What's funny is all of this takes me back to where we were, like what we were speculating before the break. I just get the impression that Green Bull was actually from a country that was not part of the world government and has experienced the hardships for which he is explaining. That is the observation which has created his conclusion. Personal experience. I almost get the impression like his move was flexing force and muscle. He doesn't want to hurt people. That's what I think. I think he doesn't want to. So it's like, maybe they'll run away if I demonstrate my powers. And again here, almost the first thing that Green Bull says is, you samurai should buzz off while you can. It's an invitation. Please leave. So kind of in opposition to where my head's been at over the break, like in 1053, we learned that Green Bull admires Akainu, and we thought that maybe he would be like Akainu. But I wonder if Green Bull couldn't be any more unlike Akainu. It's their differences which creates the admiration. So with this being speculated, Green Bull is trying to be like Akainu, but is not like Akainu, which is an interesting dynamic. Also applies, I think, to a lot of people. The people that you look up to, you try to emulate them, but not always successfully. But yeah, long story short here is, I don't think that Green Bull is going to hurt Momonosuke. I don't think that Momonosuke is going to defeat Green Bull. So the only way I can see this making sense at all is if Momonosuke uses words to convince Green Bull to put down his arms. And he may have some success in this if Green Bull personally understands their plight. Like just a stab in the dark, but I wonder if Greenbull, if he's uncertain justice, or something to that effect. So what is Oda's out here? Like, what are some of the things that he's likely going to touch on? Again, the first thing that Greenbull says, as we see him, he says, the ability to sway others, that really is something you don't see very often, huh? And clearly here he's talking about Luffy. I wonder where he got this quote. I assume it's from the prisoner mine. That's just, he asked people about Straw Hat Luffy, given that he's supposed to go capture him. And this was something that somebody said to him. So clearly it's a curiosity for Greenbull. It's something that perhaps doesn't align with his worldview. And then he attacks the samurai, and what does he discover? He discovers that Straw Hat Luffy has befriended the literal child of Kaido, the person he just defeated. It ties back to that initial question. And like, real talk, he doesn't know the half of it. I mean, like, Oda can just throw things at Greenbull if he needs more evidence that this is a real thing. But as it appears to me, the pathway of victory is somehow convincing Greenbull that Luffy is God, or God-like the Celestial Dragons. Or at least getting far enough for him to ask the question and become uncertain. Enough evidence to make him question how the world works. Challenge his understanding. But yeah, so those are my thoughts about the Greenbull stuff. It is pretty much as divergent as you can imagine from what we're actually supposed to think in the chapter, which is awkward, right? Because we're going to come back next week and he's just going to be exactly as advertised, and all of this is going to be a waste of time. But I do like this interpretation more, because not only is it interesting to discuss and it has some depth to it, but it retroactively makes the pacing not fast, right? Because it just seems that way because it feels like an expo dump, but if it's actually a part of Greenbull's character in a very nuanced and intelligent way, you know, it changes my whole perception of it to look at it this way, so I prefer to do that. But yeah, before we move on, just gonna throw another contradiction at you. Prejudice breeds stability. Again, here, assuming that Greenbull is a man of science, it's about observation and reason. Within the definition of prejudice itself, I'll just read you the definition. This is the first one that comes up. Preconceived opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience. So a man of science basically saying that everything that's sacrilegious to what he holds true brings stability. So if this holds up, I mean, you could see how Greenbull might be secretly hoping for any other answer. And the last thing that I want to mention is another contradiction. Greenbull says that prejudice brings stability, but prejudice is having an opinion that's not based on reason or experience. So then we begin this whole Greenbull section with him discussing traits about Luffy as though he asked people or asked someone about him. So in the pursuit of this understanding, Greenbull is eliminating his own prejudice. He could have thought about Luffy as a big, angry pirate that's going to destroy the world and cause bad things, greedy, all the negative attributes that he could have just imagined those based on generalities, and it would have made sense. A lot of people actually do that, but he's pursuing the truth. So he's undermining his own stability as an admiral, as an enforcer of justice. I'm fairly certain that irony is the correct word to use in this circumstance. But there's still a lot to talk about, so we really got to move on. The next part of the chapter, the theme which tied it together was the pupil overcoming the master. I think that my thoughts about Shanks are a little less out of the box than it was for Greenbull, but at the same time, it's going to be what we're supposed to believe from the chapter and what I actually think about it, just the same. But we see Shanks as he's arrived at Wano, and for a second, you really think that it's about to happen. They know that Luffy was victorious over Kaido and Big Mom. He's been made an emperor, and even his crew, Lucky Roo and the others, think it's time to meet Luffy, right? He's grown up, he's become a great pirate. This is the moment that we've been waiting for. Shanks reflects on all of this with a smirk on his face, and then he sits down at the table, pours himself a cup, and tells Ben Beckman it's time to compete against Luffy. As it's given to us in the chapter, what I think at surface level you're supposed to be thinking is that the mentor here, Shanks, being surpassed by the pupil Luffy, he doesn't like it. Quite frankly, this is a massive subversion because it contradicts everything that we know about Shanks. Shanks had in a conversation with Whitebeard said that he bet his arm on the future, bet his arm that Luffy would be the one, and now he's trying to stop him? Obviously, I want this to make sense with what we already know about Shanks, and I do think that that's possible. And honestly, it's really not all that controversial, in my opinion. Like, when I first read this, it seems like a no-brainer to me. My opinion is that Shanks is playing chess, not checkers. No, he's not evil. No, he doesn't have it out for Luffy in any way. I think that that's kind of ridiculous. Even Lucky Roo and the other members of the crew thought that Shanks was going to meet Luffy, but Shanks decided not to, and it's not because he doesn't like Luffy. I think that the smile as he reminisces says that pretty clearly. And it's not because he's jealous, or after all of this time of not searching for the One Piece, he's finally like, yes, I'm motivated now. No, Shanks is playing chess. He, for some reason, has decided that it can't be as easy as giving Luffy a hug and then watching him win. So before we dig deeper into this, let's first acknowledge Oda spent a panel or two on Shanks acquiring the Gomu Gomu no Mi from the world government ship. I think that it is pretty well telegraphed that Shanks knew what he was looking for when he attacked that ship. Even the people on the ship didn't know, right? They're like, oh, some minor devil fruit, that's all we have. Why would Shanks be attacking us? But Shanks knew. If I had to guess, Roger's parting words to Shanks included this knowledge about the devil fruit, because we know that this devil fruit relates to the Void Century. Roger would have known those secrets, perhaps knew what the devil fruit was renamed as, so Shanks knew. The other thing that we know is that even though Shanks acquired the fruit, he did not eat it himself, which suggests that he intended on giving it to somebody else. So from this alone, there's the level of scheming, the plotting here from Shanks is not amateur level. The man has a plan. This is still a theory, but one that is justified enough and is strong enough that it is my headcanon, but the person who has this devil fruit is likely going to be the one that turns the world upside down, right? We know that Luffy has the fruit, he's going to do that anyway. It seems fairly straightforward. We also know that Roger was waiting for someone. He's told that to Whitebeard. I suspect that he told that to Shanks as well. So Shanks is waiting on someone, looking for someone to give this devil fruit to be the person who does everything and changes the world. And that would include finding the One Piece. Maybe he didn't choose Luffy, but ultimately Luffy got the fruit, so fate chose him. And Shanks, throughout the story, has been pretty on board with this. Hence, giving his arm up for Luffy, betting it on the future. He didn't need to say that to Whitebeard. That was an honest thought. So Shanks has at least a decent understanding of the endgame or some of the pieces. Those pieces now belong to Luffy. Luffy's climbing up the ranks. He seems like the guy. I'm sure that Shanks believes in him. I'm sure that Shanks wants Luffy to win. But here's the thing, guys. The great power that Goldie Roger had, and I'm sure that Shanks witnessed this firsthand, is that no matter the odds, no matter the circumstances, he always won. Shiggy's entire fleet didn't matter. The world government Garp after him, it didn't matter. Even on his deathbed, it didn't matter. If Luffy is of the same caliber, and he's about to do something that hasn't been done for 1,000 years, then Shanks being his opponent, it shouldn't matter. The other thing is that all of the strife, all of the struggles, only makes Luffy stronger. Is Luffy where he is now if it was easy, if things were just given to him? No, of course not. It's Luffy putting himself in danger and attracting strong foes that has allowed Luffy to grow to where he needs to be. And I think that Shanks understands that. I think that standing in Luffy's way is a way of helping him. You don't get better without testing yourself. You need good competition. Good competition brings out the best in you. This applies to literally everybody. I just want you guys to be prepared that when we saw Shanks last during the reverie, when he was talking to the Gorosei, it seems very, very likely that the person that Shanks warned the Gorosei of, that he told them to prepare for, was Luffy. And it's not because he's evil, and it's not because he's an agent of the government. But these kinds of things can also work in Luffy's favor as well. This is sort of another way of taking it, which I think both can be true at the same time, but Shanks going out of his way to warn the world government of Luffy particularly with what the government clearly already knows about him, I think it puts Shanks on good terms with them. So it puts Shanks in the position to help Luffy even more if the government is expecting him to put up more of a fight against Luffy, but at some crucial juncture, he doesn't. So here's where it gets a little bit sticky for me, right? The world government should know that Luffy is Shanks' protege for two reasons. One, Luffy wears a straw hat that he got from Shanks. Shanks wore a straw hat. Roger wore a straw hat. Then all of a sudden he's not, and then this kid has it. Second, they should know that Shanks stole the Gomu Gomu no Mi. Now it is in the hands of this kid. Like, who gave him this fruit? Right? So I kind of think that the world government has to be idiots not to put two and two together. That being said, maybe that's what Shanks' intentions are, and he's trying to play both sides a little bit. The last thought that I have on this is that there's potentially other things that need to happen that Shanks knows or thinks he needs to do. The main thing which comes to mind is that Shanks is here in Wano. However, he has no intentions of meeting Luffy. So why is he here? What's the purpose of being here? And so he tells Ben Beckman it's time that we search for the One Piece. Obviously, that might include the poneglyphs that are here. It might also include Pluton. Is Shanks worried about Pluton? Does he not want Luffy to have it yet? Does he think that maybe it needs to be protected until Luffy is truly ready? This also kind of presumes that he already knows where the Pluton was. Did Roger tell them this? Did Rayleigh tell him this? Who knows? I also wonder just how much Shanks is telling his crew. They were so ready to be like, yeah, let's go meet Luffy, and then Shanks is like, nah. They weren't anticipating that, they weren't expecting that, which means that Shanks hasn't been very open, which is curious. But yeah, I really don't have too much to say other than this. Evil Shanks? No, I don't think so. This lines up with everything else that we know in the story. It really just wouldn't make sense in any other way. However, it adds so much more intrigue to Shanks pulling the strings and trying to bring about this new era. And this confirms, in my mind, it confirms that Shanks has a big role to play in the future. I think that a lot of people, myself included, were thinking, Shanks is just going to show up in the story and then fight Blackbeard and then lose, and Luffy's going to run into him at the last moment and be there when he dies. I don't think so anymore. I think Shanks plays a huge role in some future battle, potentially a battle closer to Laugh Tale. That seems very likely. And the other thing here, and I'm taking a huge L on this front, a lot of people said this, that Luffy was going to defeat every Yonko. I don't know how decisive a victory Luffy's going to have over Shanks, but it seems likely now that they definitely will fight. How serious will that fight be? Serious enough, but I kind of expect that it will happen, or at least this chapter leads me to believe that Shanks is going to play it that far. But I also really love these parallels between Luffy and Sabo in the chapter. We see some of Shanks' own crew speculate about Strat Luffy. They clearly don't know him very well, so all they know is the rumor, the legend, the hype, and you can see that it's growing. They say, I guess the top officers have a past with him. They really know the Straw Hat Luffy. They say he's like a rampaging demon monkey. He's totally out of hand, which is really cool. At this point in time, is Luffy stronger than Shanks? I mean, they're surrounded. They're on the crew of a legend, but Luffy's mystique has already surpassed Shanks. And the main reason this is the case is because Luffy is an animal. He is reckless and brazen and just does insane stuff constantly. Luffy's always the center of attention. And even though Shanks is incredibly strong and been in the New World for so long, he's been comparatively very quiet, keeps to himself, just sort of surviving out in the New World, facing who he needs to, which is different from Luffy, and you can see how this creates a narrative around him. The same thing seems to be applied to Sabo at the end of the chapter, where, again, Dragon's own subordinates, which are Revolutionary Army members in the countries that he's freeing, are beginning to think of Sabo on a higher level than Dragon. And it doesn't mean that Sabo is stronger than Dragon. In fact, that might just straight up be not true. So there's a lot of similarities here with Sabo and Luffy that are interesting. I really never thought that Oda would hype Sabo up like this. Like, for what purpose is it going to serve? But yeah, there's similarities between Sabo and Luffy, but there's also some differences as well. Like, when you talk about Luffy, the reputation he's been gaining is 100% accurate to the things that Luffy is attempting to accomplish on his own. He's not being manipulated in any way. The world government has attempted throughout the story to de-hype Luffy. All the things that he's done, they've shushed it as much as possible. You even see this with the bounty that Luffy got recently. There was every reason for him to have a higher bounty than both Kid and Law, but that didn't happen. Meanwhile, with Sabo, yes, Sabo's earned, I'm sure he's earned his place to a degree, but the thing which everybody's talking about that's putting him on a higher level, that is probably not true, right? So we learned that Cobra is dead. We knew that he was sick before, so that's of no surprise. But it's speculated in the news that Sabo was the one to kill him. And I'm just going to, we agree, right? That is not true. Sabo had no intention of going to the Reverie in order to kill Cobra. So it almost seems like the opposite thing, right? Rather than the world government trying to de-hype Sabo, they are trying to hype him up. And maybe that's the point. Maybe they're trying to destabilize the Revolutionary Army by giving Dragon competition. You almost have a foil of the same thing happening in this chapter. Shanks choosing to stand in Luffy's way because he thinks that it will help him. And the world government choosing to hype up Sabo so that so that Dragon stands in his way to destabilize them, weaken them. Does that make sense? But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, there's other things to potentially discuss here. Like, for instance, I've assumed here that the world government has sort of intentionally raised Sabo's reputation, but that might not be true. We saw Morgans hear the stories coming out of the Reverie, and he was given talking points by the world government. But he says, nah, I know the truth. I'm going to report it as is because the truth is too spicy. And then we see an agent, a cipher pole, appear, and it's like, no, you will follow the world government's command, and Morgans pretty much washes the guy and runs away. This might be the point where it verges on too much convolutedness, but just realistically, the Gorosei could be that smart. They could be that good at manipulating Morgans. They could have sent him a story that just basically send him a story so that he doesn't do it. Meanwhile, feed the rumors elsewhere that he heard that Sabo killed Cobra, and because they knew that was so much drama and intrigue, knew Morgans would report that anyway, and be only more confirmed in his belief that that's what actually happened when the world government tries to manipulate him. So long story short, Morgans actually did what the Gorosei wanted him to do. My brain hurts trying to rationalize this, but it really could be that smart. But the main reason this seems realistic is just, quite frankly, we know Sabo well enough that he would not have killed Cobra. We know that. The other thing that we know is Imu and the Gorosei had certain persons of interest. Imu held the bounty posters of Luffy, Blackbeard, and Shirahoshi, who we all know are huge threats to the world government, but there was a fourth bounty poster as well, and that was Vivi. Then we have the Reverie, and coincidence or not, Cobra dies at the Reverie and Vivi goes missing. That wasn't Sabo. If anything, that was the Gorosei. Cobra was a light that was erased. Potentially Vivi as well. So when Morgans hears this story that Sabo killed Cobra, we know it's not true. That's not the truth, which is very different from Morgans, for instance, reporting things that Luffy has done, because, he may be hyping Luffy up, but we do know the truth within that. Luffy really did go into Big Mom's territory and mess with her. Luffy really has been involved in the war, which took out Big Mom and Kaido. This Sabo stuff feels like the narrative that the world government wanted out there, and not the truth. A part of me does wonder whether the world government is actually more afraid of Dragon than they are Sabo. We know Dragon is a D, there's something important that's going to happen with a D, there's things of prophecy. Dragon is more likely to fit those things, I believe, than Sabo. So, in a way, we know that the Gorosei tried to manipulate the perception of Luffy by lowering his bounty to the same levels as Kid and Law. This feels like an attempt to attack Dragon, more so than build Sabo up. I think as part of some of the prophecies that exist in the world or events that have been foretold or people expect, an element of this is that whoever is going to turn the world upside down is going to have a legion of people that believe in him, that look up to him. We speculated this recently, like Luffy's going to show up to the final battle and everyone's going to be on his side. So you could see how the Gorosei might see value in making people worship Sabo and not Dragon. I could definitely see it as an attempt to ensure that Dragon does not fulfill the criteria of the prophecy. If he is in fact a candidate, and I do think that he is a Joy Boy candidate, but obviously we need more about what people know or what Imu knows. But this part of the chapter has me absolutely floored because I'm so interested in where it goes. Like, okay, this is all very interesting, but what are the story ramifications of this? How does Dragon feel about Sabo's legacy potentially surpassing his own while he is still alive? What do we actually know about Dragon? Very little. There's so much potential here for drama. I wouldn't bet the farm on it, but it could be. I feel like this is a pertinent question to be asking right now. Is Dragon like Shanks, or is Dragon his own character? I think that we can confidently state that Shanks is doing everything in order to support Luffy. Even if it appears as if he's acting against Luffy, I think wholeheartedly Shanks is on Team Luffy. He's bet the future on the guy. Now, Dragon could be the same in that he's okay with Sabo's reputation rising and could be on Sabo's side or see value in this or understand that his time is limited and when he's gone, Sabo is going to be the next one to pick up the flag. Or Dragon could be a lot more selfish and see Sabo as a real threat. A theory that I really like, just in general, we learned from Kaido that enough people seem to know about the legend of Joy Boy, and there's some potential of people actually trying to be the person of prophecy. I personally think that's what Rox D. Zebek was trying to do as he attacks the world government or attacks the Celestial Dragons. I believe that it was an attempt to be the person of prophecy. And I wonder the same thing about Dragon, whether he's trying to be that guy. He thinks of himself as the hero who's going to turn the world upside down and free the people. If this is true, I think that it's a really tasteful, beautiful inversion of the relationship between the mentor and the pupil, where Shanks and Luffy is very different from Dragon and Sabo. And while similar things may be occurring for both Luffy and Sabo at the same time, how their faction interprets it, or reacts to it, or acts based on it, is very different. I'm going to say something here that'll probably get me in trouble, but these thoughts have been really intrusive for me for a very long time. But I just wonder how Dragon feels about Luffy. Dragon basically abandoned Luffy for the pursuits of his own goal. And it doesn't feel like it's in the same way as Shanks, where Shanks left Luffy to nurture and grow on his own, become what he's supposed to be. With Dragon, I do really feel like it's less that and more Dragon feels like he has more important things to do than worry about his brat or his kid from the East Blue. It's not necessary that he's heartless and totally is uncaring for Luffy, but I don't think that Dragon believes in Luffy. And the straight up honest truth is that at no point in time has Dragon ever been in Luffy's life to ever be his mentor figure, while Shanks was. So Shanks actually knows Luffy, where Dragon, only rumors. And maybe the simple expectation that Luffy is going to be great because he was great and Garp was great. So Luffy comes from a strong bloodline, which means that he's destined to shake the world a bit. But I really do think that Dragon is more of a player in this game. He isn't betting on Luffy, he's betting on himself. So I always wondered how Dragon would react to Luffy. Like, for instance, if Dragon knows that the devil fruit that Luffy possesses is one that's important to becoming Joy Boy, does Dragon put aside all of his years' work and all of his dreams and choose Luffy? Or could it get sinister? Could Dragon be an enemy? one far more real than the impression Shanks is trying to give us in this chapter. A theory that we've talked about in the past is that we know that Shirahoshi, Poseidon, is an ancient weapon. Poseidon is talked about on the poneglyphs. When it comes to in-game mythos and prophecy, it is very likely that Shirahoshi is in this. And so we know that Caribou knows Poseidon's identity, and he's going to share this information with somebody. This has always been a really fascinating hypothetical for me. Like, how would Dragon react to this knowledge? Let's just say, in a thought experiment, Dragon is the one who discovers Caribou's secret. He's also trying to turn the world upside down, trying to take down the world government, and knows that the ancient weapons would provide him power in order to do so. Would he be willing to capture Shirahoshi in the pursuit of this? And let's just say that, I mean, Luffy's not going to like that. Luffy's about freedom, right? What does Shirahoshi want? If Shirahoshi doesn't want to fight with you, if she doesn't want to harm anyone, then she shouldn't do it, right? So Luffy could theoretically confront Dragon over this, and how would Dragon react? Would Dragon basically be like, oh, I didn't realize that she was your friend. I realized all this is all wrong, and I apologize for being a dick. And I just think to myself, no, that's not likely. We know, absolutely know, that Dragon cares about taking down the celestial dragons. So, in this way, an ancient weapon's power should be very tempting. And all it would take is for Oda to make Dragon give in to the power, to turn the story in a completely different direction from what anybody is thinking. Which is kind of how I felt like this whole chapter was. It's like a lesson that Oda is going to subvert our obvious thoughts in some way. The story is not going to go beat for beat exactly how anybody is going to imagine it. And this applies to Dragon as much as it applies to Sabo, Shanks, and Green Bull. So Dragon learns about Shirahoshi's identity, is tempted by her power, captures her in an attempt to use that power against her will, is confronted by Luffy, and Luffy says, no, she's my friend. This isn't right. I think that Dragon is so caught up in his ideals and his mission that it's not going to be that easy to get him to stop. And that's the surest way when you hurt Luffy's friends. It doesn't matter whether it's in the pursuit of good or evil, that you become Luffy's enemy. So I am not saying that this is absolutely going to happen, right? That is not what I'm saying. But we just don't know that much about Dragon, so hypotheticals exist, and this one is just fascinating. And so when you have this moment in the chapter where Sabo's reputation surpasses Dragon, and there's potential ramifications, consequences in the story, and you wonder how Dragon might react to this or treat Sabo after this, it makes hypotheticals like this hold more weight in my mind. Like, this might be where Oda's actually going. But anyway, let's not get too far into headcanon. Let's go back to what was actually in the chapter. I thought it was interesting that Dragon is recruiting kingdoms to his side. They speak about specifically 8 rebellious kingdoms, and it just reminds me of the Void Century, right? Where you had the 20 kingdoms which were allied against the ancient kingdom. There's definitely parallels here, I believe, and does reinforce my thoughts a bit that Dragon is trying to recreate history. Also, just like the 20 kingdoms, he is trying to take down the current gods of the world. And also, this feels like a purposeful similarity. After the 20 kingdoms defeated the current gods, we presume the Lunarians, they became gods. They were worshipped as gods. And you can see in this chapter that the people are already beginning to worship Sabo. But anyway, I really love the subversion of all of this. This is probably something that's going to be lost to time from people who catch up to the series later on. But those who are following the video now know that it's been a very popular speculation for a long time, since the Reverie, basically, that Sabo could play the role of Ace, captured by the world government. There's some sort of execution Luffy needs to save him. And I'm just gonna be quite honest with you, I really disliked this theory. I often point to the similarities pre and post time skip, but it's important that the story feels different. So things can be similar, but as long as they feel different, it doesn't matter. And it always felt like Sabo getting captured would have been too similar to Ace. And with this chapter, I think Oda pretty much solidly buried that theory. The Revolutionary Army rescued Kuma. Sabo escaped. If he was captured, there's no way that the people would still be worshipping him as some sort of god. and Akainu would have definitely revealed that. But we knew from the newspapers that something had happened with Sabo, and it was very, very easy to jump to this conclusion that he had been captured. I think that that's what Oda wanted us to think. And so this subversion was just welcome. It's everything that I wanted. It complicates the story, it makes it more interesting. But now we have a question about Vivi. Is Vivi the one that the world government is going to capture? But even if that is true, it already feels different because she's, it's not like Ace where it's very public. Vivi has just disappeared. So she's either with the Revolutionary Army like Sabo rescued her, and Akainu doesn't even know that. And/or, and I find this to be more likely, especially, I don't know how many of you watched Arter's Return to the Reverie a few years ago, which was a theory that was actually drawn out in manga form, but his whole concept was that Imu was going to capture Vivi. And that's really where my head is right now. So even though you could draw parallels with Ace, it's a thing that feels very different. And it's just another thing which adds more hype and intrigue in the future of the story. Why was Imu holding Vivi's wanted poster? When that first dropped, I think my theory is that Vivi is a rebellious ruler, and that the world government is going to make an example out of her. But if she's just disappeared, she's locked in the dungeon deep within Marijois that only Imu has the keys for, she's not being made an example of. There's a lot of theories out there that Vivi is an ancient weapon or holds some sort of power that is unexplained. I don't like these theories that much, but I am looking for an answer to explain Vivi's importance in a way which makes more sense to me. The only good guess that I have, again, not particularly liking the theories that Vivi herself holds some sort of secret power, is we know the kingdom of Alabasta was associated with the Pluton, the poneglyph of Pluton. They were keeping it secret. I presume the world government didn't know where the ancient kingdom stashed this poneglyph or where it was. On this poneglyph, you would have the location of Pluton. Just a random theory I'm going to throw out here and not justify too much, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Imu can read the characters on the poneglyphs. Another side theory that I'm not going to justify too much is that I'm very curious as to whether Nico Olvia, Nico Robin's mother, is actually dead. And whether or not the world government instead captured her and kind of like Vivi is in Imu's secret dungeon for people that he has some use for. The government seems to be ramping up efforts for Robin. This could be to read the poneglyphs. It could also be to manipulate Nico Olvia as well. I kind of like these thoughts. So, discovering the One Piece could actually be important to him, or finding all the clues. So maybe they're looking for this information about the poneglyph that Alabasta had. Rumors related to Pluton did exist around Alabasta, and perhaps that leads them to knowledge that the Pluton is in Wano and events that are soon to be taking place. But once again here, we probably got a little bit too deep. I just wanted to share some of my rough headcanon here about how I see things happening, and of course expecting Oda to do things in a lot of small or large different ways. But yeah, the last thing I feel like the big discussion point of the chapter is Akainu. How does the Marines react to all of this? He makes a pretty bold statement of like, yeah, all these things aren't going right as of this moment, but just be prepared, we're gonna hit back. And I really hope that's true. As I've sort of already speculated at the beginning of this review, I kind of expect Greenbull to leave without doing what he set out to do. But I really do think that it's important, particularly with the Akainu's last statement. The Marines need to save face at some point in time. Oda needs to build them back up because they're at a low point right now. How he does this, when he does this, I guess we'll find out. But I do have hope. But yeah, guys, this chapter was 1,000,000% worth it. I get some sense that maybe some people were a little bit disappointed, but I feel like with how I view it, this is nothing but just incredible from any angle that you want to look at it. Top tier in every sense of the word. That is my opinion. But as always, I'm curious as to what you guys think, whether you noticed something from the chapter that I might have missed. Just share your thoughts. Remember to like, subscribe, click the bell. We're making content, okay? We're in for some more peak piece over the coming weeks, guaranteed. But yeah, as always, guys, have a wonderful day.